What was your, is this person serious moment? Story 1. While working the front desk of a hotel one day, a woman handed me her debit card for payment. With our software, we insert the card and it takes a minute to process in the reader and load the number properly into the software. As I'm waiting for the reader to get finished with the process, I start making her, classic magnet strip style, keycards for her room. Our keymaker was an old machine that made plenty of loud beeps as you program the keys. Given its age, most times I would have to try 3 or more times to get a key to program correctly. I hand her card back along with 2 key cards and she just screeches. "What did you just do?" Baffled and confused, I just said, pardon? To which she just repeatedly yelled, "What the hell did you just do?" I'm just giving you the keys to your room, ma'am. All I need is a signature and you're all good to go." She then called 911. Not even the non-emergency number 911. I had no idea what the hell was going on. I tried to ask her what she was doing and she just said, "I'm not saying another word to you until the police get here. I know my rights." Okay. She then went outside the lobby and waited for the police to arrive. Some minutes later, she comes back in with an officer, points to me and says, "That's her. She's the one." I was the only person working. Long story short, it comes to light that she thought me making her keycards for her was me swiping her debit card multiple times and charging her thousands of dollars. The officer comes behind the desk. He asks me to repeat the process I did with the keycard reader and ask her if that was the noise she heard. She yells, "Yes, you see?" He then tells her that was the sound of the keycard maker and not me swiping her debit card. She just stood there staring for a second before getting red in the face, grabbing her belongings, leaving the keys and unsigned folio for the room with me, and storming out while yelling, "I don't have to deal with this BS." She then called a few hours later about the single approval hold for the room that was put on her card, accusing me of trying to steal from her again. Americans over 50 are so ignorantly paranoid that I'm convinced there had to have been a concerted conspiracy to make them this way at some point. Story 2. I used to work at the register of my college campus store. People mostly came in to buy energy drinks, gum, or whatever, but you could also buy sweatshirts and even computers. But given most people only bought one small thing, we didn't have carts or baskets anywhere for shoppers. Anyway, one day a woman comes in, a student's mom I'm guessing, and asks me for help to reach a sweater on the top shelf. I grab it for her and go to hand it to her, but she motions at me to hold onto it. She proceeded to walk around the store, grabbing several items and then giving them to me to hold. She literally shopped for like 10 minutes using me as her personal shopping cart. Luckily, I had a coworker in the store on the same shift, so he was able to handle the register. At the end of this whole ridiculous segment, she got a message on her phone, read it, and said, "Oh, you know what? I actually have to go meet my son. I'll come back later to get the things I need." Then she left, and I was left standing there with an armful of random crap that I then needed to go put back one by one. Like, come on, woman. I was an 18-year-old kid who was pretty excited to have a job to begin with and was scared of losing it from being rude to a customer. I definitely spent some solid time in the shower thinking of how I would have handled it differently. Story 3. I used to work for my roommate's mom and stepdad doing installation work in crawl spaces and attics. My pay was set up so I always got paid the same amount no matter how many hours I worked, which was ridiculous because I almost always worked at least 40 hours a week. Anyway, one day my boss collected the pay for a job early and told us we had to finish that day, which initially was fine. A 14-hour workday later, I felt it was considerably less fine, but I did it and didn't voice a single complaint. The next day I called to tell them I was going to wrap up early. I'd reached a good stopping point and it was only 2 hours early. She proceeded to tell me that she was going to dock my pay for the week if I leave before 4, and I calmly explained how I just worked 14 hours the previous day. I have a life and I need to have time to wash clothes, buy groceries, etc. She then says to me that I maybe should have got the job done quicker on the previous day if I knew I had things to take care of. It was at this point that I about lost it. Like, did you think I was just hanging out in the man's crawl space having the time of my life? The icing on the cake is I drove over to talk about it with them and we agreed I should be paid hourly, and they proceeded to cut my hours to 25 to 30 for 3 weeks. I quit shortly thereafter. Story 4. I just had one yesterday. I've been going to my local high school running track to jog and exercise since lockdown. Well, to park your car, you have to go through a driveway that's designated with arrows as one way. There's an exit on the other side of the parking lot. Anyway, the soccer moms in town are notorious for parking their cars in this driveway and making it hard to get into the actual parking lot. As I pull into the driveway, one of these women thinks that it's a brilliant idea to put her car into reverse as I'm entering. I couldn't swerve out of the way because there was an SUV parked right at the mouth of the entrance, taking up half the available space. So I reacted and honked my horn. She proceeded to panic, throw the car into drive, and run it into a small boulder that lines this driveway. It ripped the passenger side air deflector clean off. According to her, I'm now a dirtbag that honks her horn for no reason. Jesus Christ, if you panic at a car horn, what the heck are you doing driving? Shh, here's a little secret for you. This video is sponsored by none other than me and my team at Rufus Rugs. We're the masters of creating custom, hand-tufted rugs that capture who you truly are. Whether you want to transform one of our intriguing thumbnails into a rug, for a friend, obviously, or you're craving a room makeover with awesome anime-inspired designs, we've got your back. Oh, and did I mention, each and every rug is skillfully handcrafted by me and my friends. No BS dropshipping gimmick here. You'll be blown away by your rug. Hit the first link in the description to learn more. Story 5. I have worked at Spirit Halloween every season for the past 5 years. I would highly recommend it if you're trying to make some spare cash. Anyway, super shady things happen at Spirit Halloween all the time, so I have endless stories to tell. For this story, I was working in the dressing room, basically just regulating who goes in and taking costumes out of the bags to withhold accessories, to prevent theft, etc. This was my first year working there, so I was about 20. Just a couple of days before Halloween, a girl around my age came to the dressing room with a typical college girl costume. That's all I'll say. She said something like, "Oh good, we're about the same size. I'm in a rush so I wouldn't have time to find an associate to help me." I just kind of smiled and took the bag from her, like, what the heck does that even mean? I unpacked the costume, leave the accessories, and put it in a basket to carry to the dressing room. She looked really confused, so I just asked her to follow me and I'd get her a dressing room. I wish I was making this up, but this girl says to me, "Why would I go back there for you to change?" Huh? I can't even remember exactly how I responded because I was so confused. It was something along the lines of, "You try on the costume yourself so you know how it fits you. An associate doesn't do it for you." This girl had the audacity to be mad at me for saying that. Her response was basically, "Well, I don't want to have to get out of my clothes and change into the costume, so it isn't worth my time. It's so unsanitary to have a bunch of people trying the costume on instead of you just doing it, so I don't even want it anymore." Followed by her storming out. Story 6. I worked at an arcade or bowling alley combo that served food like a full restaurant. My position had me deliver the food and take the dirty dishes to the back, so there's a group of like 6 people bowling and they ordered our sample platter that had a little of everything from the appetizers menu. I brought this platter out and set it down, asking if there was anything else they needed. Without really looking, this woman says, "We're good." I begin to turn around and this woman grabs my arm and yanks me toward her like I was her kid and says, "Where the heck are my chicken wings?" In disbelief of what was happening, I paused looking at her, then the platter, eventually saying, "They were right there, ma'am. This little basket in the platter." She lets go and with a skeptical expression says, "Okay," as if she really didn't believe the wings were there. If I didn't hate working there and my shift was any farther from being over in 10 minutes, I would have spoken to a manager. But I didn't care enough to stay to get it sorted and just wanted to leave. Story 7. Me and my friend, both around 14 at the time, snuck some of my dad's whiskey while my parents were out. We each had a few sips from the bottle, did the obligatory, "It burns," and that was about it. At first. A few minutes later, my friend starts acting really drunk. He's crashing into walls, falling down and slurring his speech. I'm thinking there's no way this kid is drunk. We had like 25 milliliters of that whiskey. I don't even feel anything except the lingering little burn in my throat. He's gotta be faking it. He started dry heaving, smashed a lamp, and went toward the TV like he was going to grab it. I had to literally bear hug him while he fought like he was resisting arrest. He was foaming at the mouth and screaming. And wouldn't you know it, just like that he sobered up and relaxed. So in the span of 5 minutes, he got drunk on a sip of whiskey, wrecked my house, fought me like a wild animal, then sobered up. Man, that's some grade A BS right there. I wish I could sober up in 5 minutes. I also wish you'd leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. Story 8. Mine was when we went out drinking with 4 of my friends from college and played Never Have I Ever at a bar. A friend of mine, let's call her B for a bar girl, knew something about me that I was very embarrassed about and it made me anxious even thinking about it. B knew this too. So naturally, she brings up this very specific thing in the game, then looks at me directly, making it obvious for everyone at the table that I've in fact done this thing. This hurt me, but was not actually my, "Is this person serious?" moment. It came afterward, when another friend realized how uncomfortable I was, so to keep the game going and move on from me, she did the same thing with B, telling the table something that B has done. Long story short, B flipped out in the middle of the bar and started yelling at my friend for being rude and exposing her to all of us, humiliating her, etc. This might not sound that irrational from her side, but the catch is that we all knew about B's thing because she already told us and other classmates about it numerous times, whereas with mine, she was the only person who knew. Needless to say, we're no longer friends with B after that night. Yikes, man. Good thing B buzzed off then. With friends like that, their enemies pity them too much to do anything else. Story 9. This only happened a few days ago. I got called into the manager's office and got offered the temporary clothing manager position. I didn't necessarily want a manager's position, but I had basically been doing the job for months without the benefits, so I accepted it. Went onto the shop floor and was immediately greeted with a congrats from colleagues. A girl I work with that had recently become a duty manager, how she became a manager is beyond me, went and told my business to everyone, including the fact that she had been offered the job first and turned it down, so that's why it was handed to me. Everyone knew I was being offered the position before I did. 15 minutes later, I'm approached by a different manager saying there's an issue with putting me on the system, but they're trying to rectify it. For the next 2 hours, I listened to the girl telling everyone and anyone how hard she's going to have it and that she will now have to cover the clothing department as well as her own department. She told colleagues, friends, and even customers who didn't even ask. She made my business known to everyone. Eventually, I was brought into the office and officially told that I wouldn't be the clothing manager. The boss missed a deadline to put me on the system. The manager apologized profusely. and I went back out on the floor to hear the new DM telling my story yet again. Longest shift ever. Story 10. Had a new boy in the office who had no idea what personal hygiene consists of. Not a great start. He was loud and obnoxious, not even good at his job. Then one day at the smoking shelter, he starts talking about catching rabbits and traps. He's pointing to the fields around the building and saying he's going to ask for permission to put traps out there. We laughed. For all the smack he talked, not one of us took him seriously. When we go back inside, he heads straight to the cubicle of our office manager. This cubicle is adorned with pictures of rabbits. Some are her pets, some are just rabbits she thinks are cute. She has statues, rabbit pens, and pencils. Nobody in their right mind would have asked this woman in this cubicle about going trapping rabbits. He did. I was surprised he made it to the end of the day. I was not surprised when he didn't return the day after. I can just imagine the look on her face when he asked her that in her bun cubicle shrine. Probably got a big ol' whiff of his odeur corporelle to add insult to injury. Story 11. I worked for a grocery store. Big chain one is probably the first one that comes to mind. I was a bagger or cart wrangler. There was this one overweight blonde woman, C. Karen, who would come in all the time and cause no end of chaos. Examples of her craziness include buying a 15-pound turkey. She came in complaining it tasted bad and wanting to return it. She presented a platter with an empty carcass save for one piece of meat and one bone. She bought a $37 plant, did not water it, showed up with it 1 year and 6 months later, dead as a doornail, demanding a refund. She bought a grill, used 10 gallons of gasoline as fuel, caused an understandable fire, and came back with a receipt and charred grill, demanding a refund. I could go on. This would be a weekly, if not bi-weekly happening. It got to the point where many cashiers would see her enter the store, turn off their lights, and leave. Now when I say she made a fuss, I'm not talking about your normal, I want to speak to your manager type deal. Oh no. She would rant and rave, throw herself on the floor, roll around, throw things, call the police. 87 times that I witnessed. I kept count. And pull out her cell phone filming herself being victimized to report us to the media. She was eventually banned from the store. This took years. I heard stories that she began terrorizing her neighbor branch 7 blocks down the road. Story 12. One time I ordered a chicken fried steak in a restaurant in which I was currently the only customer. It took an hour to get my food, and when I started eating, I realized that it had gone chicken fried chicken. I called the waitress over and explained to her that I had ordered chicken fried steak, which she confirmed was accurate, but had received chicken fried chicken. She stared blankly at me for about 10 seconds and said, "What, you don't like chicken?" I'm usually pretty quick on my feet with a witty comeback, but I was literally left speechless for a minute. I finally got the words out to explain to her why I wasn't happy with this mix-up, but ended up just leaving. Needless to say, I have not been back. The restaurant in question was Pepper's in Hebronville, Texas. Another time I was in New Martinsville, West Virginia at a steakhouse, don't remember the name, and my waitress hadn't been back to refill our drinks. Looked around and saw she was getting fiddled in the drink station by what I assumed was a busboy. Story 13. I used to be the community admin for an online game about a decade ago. There was a guy who was perma-banned who kept making new accounts to protest his ban on the official forums and get people to try and rally behind him to unban him or put malicious links to scam people. Our GM staff was largely outsourced, so I did most of the forum moderation on my own. He had obvious and telling posting habits and horrendous grammar, so it was usually easy to know if it was him, and a quick check of an IP address to verify, and the account was usually banned and posts deleted where appropriate. Well, this idiot one day, using a bunch of different accounts, I'm not even sure why, banning was easy on my end, and he made like 20 messages supporting himself, all that logging in and out, made a long chain of posts trying to deliberately bribe me, out in the open, to unban his account. Not even a private message, just straight up in a new thread offering me cash to do so. For one, I started the job as a player, recruited for my honesty and ethics as a whole in the community. It wasn't happening, and the cash was negligible in what I was being paid. Second, how dumb does one have to be to think someone would accept a deal like that with everyone watching? Or did he think I would be so stupid to fall for something like that and blackmail by showing any sign of interest? I had the webmaster IP block him after that since he was using a static IP and left the thread open for posterity to prove the point. Story 14. I visited my grandparents for the holidays in the northern part of the state. All of our family went together and stayed in their fairly large house for several days. The second day I was there, I tried to organize a family game for everyone to play since nobody seemed to be doing much of anything. Nobody wanted to play any of the games I suggested, so my husband and I pulled out our Magic the Gathering cards we had brought and started to play together. My mom approached me in the middle of a game and said, "I can't believe you brought a game like that to a family gathering. You two have isolated yourself from everyone else by choosing to play your nerd game instead of mingling with family. Everyone else was just talking and watching TV, and we did end up getting my sister to join us for a game, so I don't know what her problem was. Later that same day, I got really tired from running around in the woods with a couple of my family members and decided to take a nap on the couch downstairs. I was awoken by my mom who looked concerned and asked me if I was feeling okay. I told her I was fine, just tired, and she suddenly switched. "It's too bad you came all the way here not to spend any time with your family. We were putting together a game upstairs and everyone was asking, 'Where's Raven?' But we couldn't find you." So basically, she got mad at me for playing my own game with my husband when nobody was interested in hanging out with me. But later, when I'm tired and trying to sleep, everyone decides to play a game together and I'm at fault for not wanting to spend time with my family? Story 15. I was working in a clothing store in a beach town where a Karen walked in holding one of the store's bags. When I saw her dyed blonde hair, I knew I was in for some crazy stuff. So she walked up to the register and said she'd like to make a return and pulled out a bathing suit for a little boy. Before she even handed me the receipt, I told her, "Ma'am, you can't return that." "What do you mean?" she said. "You can't return a boy's bathing suit. It's on the receipt." Which it was even circled. We always told customers this when they bought bathing suits. "Are you telling me that I can't return my son's bathing suit that he only wore once and that doesn't fit him?" "No, ma'am, I'm sorry." "Why is that?" For those people who are a little confused why Karen couldn't return the bathing suit, a lot of male bathing suits have netting in them. This netting comes into contact with your junk and your behind. In other words, Karen was basically trying to return used underwear. I tried explaining it to her using euphemisms because I wasn't prepared to talk about her son's sweat and other bodily fluids at 8 in the morning. Then she screamed at me for 10 minutes like I was a war criminal until my manager had to get involved. In conclusion, I've worked many retail jobs and have adopted the dictum, the customer is usually wrong. Another story. I worked in a bookstore where a local sci-fi author was selling his self-published series. He was a sweet guy and really interesting until he said, "You gotta watch Ancient Aliens." When I rewatched Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I realized it was a documentary. I nodded and walked away. Later before he left, he stopped me and said, "Remember, it's a documentary." I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you made it this far, I'm sure you'll also enjoy What's Your Best Karma Story? Story 3 was well deserved. See you in that video.